Tonight's a big night. Tonight is a night that we're celebrating the 19th day of Kislev, the day of liberation of the first Lubavitch Rebbe. Tonight and tomorrow and the next day, the 24 hours especially, and 48 hours of 19 and 20 Kislev in Chabad, these are very powerful and potent days, which in a certain respect, they're like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah, the new year of Hasidism. And really, they bring, when you utilize these days properly, they can cause tremendous power through the rest of the year. They can bring about tremendous power. And it's a day we take upon ourselves resolutions, just like on Rosh Hashanah. We take resolutions and we take on new mitzvot. Today we take on the resolutions to learn a little bit more. To learn a little bit more Hasidus, learn a little bit more Torah, go to another class. Today is a powerful day. We'll talk about that in a moment, but I want to introduce tonight's speaker. By divine providence, Hashgacha Pratis, we have reached out to Mr. David Nesenoff, and he accepted our invitation. David is a rabbi, publisher, journalist, author, musician, filmmaker. He received his formal education from Yeshiva University, Hebrew University, and the Jewish Theological Seminary, where he received his master's, ordination, and doctorate. He was an anti-bias consultant for the U.S. Justice Department's Civil Rights Monitor's Office, and his creative award-winning films have been screened by numerous venues, including the Sundance Film Festival. He was the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Jewish Star newspaper in New York and the Jerusalem Observer in Israel. David Nesenoff was the keynote speaker at the Yale University's Global Symposium on Anti-Semitism, and he recently received the National Jewish Hero Award from the Rohr Jewish Learning Institute. His interview with journalist and dean of the Washington Press Corps, Helen Thomas, at the White House caused her international demise. She was banished from her front row seat from journalism after a 60-year career of covering every president since Eisenhower. The interview and its aftermath also caused a striking effect on Israel, international media, anti-Semitism, and personally transformed the life of our guest speaker. It's a story of cyber hatred, life-threatening danger, and oddly enough, incredible humor. Today, Mr. Nesenoff literally travels the globe from Santa Cruz, California, Oxford University, Sydney, Australia, Brazil, and to Daytona Beach. Delivering a highly sought-out message about Hashgacha Pratis, which he coming here today is Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence. He speaks about the Lubavitch Rebbe, anti-Semitism, and life in general. His audiences have reviewed Dr. Nesenoff as hilarious, mind-blowing, uplifting, and life-changing. Let's give it up for David Nesenoff.
My mother likes it.
Wow, what an introduction, huh? My mother always saves these, so I'm going to take this home. Wow, look at this. I'm talking from over here. You thought you were in the back row? Good luck. Okay, this is a good-looking group. Let's take a selfie. This is a big group. Hold this. Reminds me, if you have your cell phone on, turn it off for a second. Make believe it's Shabbos. We're going to be, today is the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidus, so we turn off phones. So I'll turn mine off. Also, when I speak to college audiences, I tell the kids, if you text, I'm going to stop and text. I'm busy also. So just turn it off right now. Don't put it on stun. Put it away. Anybody you want to talk to is here anyway. Let me just put mine away as well. Doesn't everybody have one of those? First of all, I travel a lot, so I just want to mention to you, when I sit on planes, as you do, and you speak to someone very interesting, you get off the plane like this. Because the whole time you're like this, and you get a window seat for nothing. So I ask you if you want, don't get a stiff neck tonight. You had your fish already. There's other food coming. Turn your seat, be a mensch, turn your seat around, get comfortable. If you want to turn around in a minute to get a little more nosh, do it, but I'm the nosh now. So turn your seat around, relax a minute. Don't get a stiff neck. Don't watch me like this. You won't enjoy it. Good. Some people actually did it. Good. I do travel around the world. Baruch Hashem, thank God I've traveled this year. Paraguay, Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina, Ireland, England, California, Australia, every place in the United States and now Daytona, and also throughout Canada, East and West Coast. I've been to over 450 cities, specifically Chabad houses. The Rebbe keeps making more Chabad houses faster than I can get to them. But I try and I've been going. So I'm privileged to be here tonight. I actually now live in Boca. So I drove up. I didn't have to fly. Now, I'll tell you a little secret. I don't have a problem speaking in front of audiences. It's, you always have to, some people are a little nervous, some people don't like it. I don't have a problem with that. I do have a fear, though, and I thought I might mention it. I'm not a great flyer. I don't like to fly. And if you're going to go to 450 cities, to Chabad houses throughout the world in 10 different countries and eventually 70 different countries, you better get over that fear real quick. So about 3 years ago when I started speaking, I went to my older brother and I asked him for some advice, how to get on the plane. And he said to me some very profound advice. I share it with you just in case there's some people who are a little jittery here also. I'll just tell you what it is. It might help you also, I see. He said to me, when it's your time, it's your time. So I thought to myself, when it's my time, this is the advice. So I sit on the plane and I say to myself, when it's my time, it's my time. And I thought, okay, what if it's not my time? Baruch Hashem, right? Then I thought, but what if it's the time of the guy sitting next to me? Baruch Hashem, poo-poo, caca, all the big ones, everything's been fine, thank God, it's been okay. I've been flying and flying. Except last summer, flying from New York to Los Angeles, 5.5-hour flight. 2 hours into the flight, the pilot gets on, and he says, we have a major malfunction with this aircraft. I'm like, well, this is it. This is how it's going to be. I've been waiting for this my whole life. This is it. It's over. This is okay. So I start to have imagination. What's going to happen? We're going to lose air. I start to breathe in deeply, so I'll have more for later. It doesn't work that way. I'm going like Meshuggah. Finally, he gets back on, and he says, the problem with this aircraft is that all the toilets are broken. And the whole plane is like, ah! And of course, I'm like, Baruch Hashem, thank God. So. And by the way, just so you know, we landed in Denver, Colorado. Not to belabor the point, but I've never been there before. But if you're ever on a plane and it doesn't work, Denver, they know how to do a very good job. So I went to Denver. I thought that would be my last plane story. But the day before Rosh Hashanah, I'm flying from Chicago to New York, day before Rosh Hashanah. What is it, an hour and a half? Nothing flight. Okay. Day before I'm flying. And we get to New York, they had terrible weather. They still have terrible weather. Then all the others are flying, circling. We run out of gas. So we land in Syracuse, New York. If you ever run out of gas, in Syracuse, New York, they have a bunch of plane gas. And we land and they refuel. We get back up, and we're circling New York. Right? I don't know about you, but I like an aisle seat. Some people like I like a good aisle seat. You can stretch your leg out. The flight attendant walks by. She hits it every time she walks by. I don't know what. Okay. And by the way, if you get the aisle seat, you know it's the mitzvah, it's the chiyuv, it's obligation to turn to the person in the middle seat and the window seat, and to tell them anytime they have to get up and go, you'll be happy to get up. You tell them that. So you have to do it. I'm very nice. You can say if I'm sleeping, tap me on the shoulder. I want to be a mensch. But I always get next to these people who have some kind of stomach problem. They always go, Anyways, on this flight, I don't get the aisle seat. I get the middle seat. The pilot, the airports, they call it the mitten drinnen seat. I get that middle seat. Who's sitting next to me in the aisle seat? If people want to talk, by the way, they're selling books over there and stuff, but I came 4-hour drive today, so please, I deserve a little quiet. So I drove 4 hours. What was I saying? Oh, so I get the middle. Thank you. Somebody's listening here. I get the middle seat. Who's sitting in the aisle seat? An Arab Muslim. Okay, but I speak Arabic, so I had a good time with him. I was talking. He's a real Arab Muslim. You know, his wife was sitting behind us with the 4 kids. She had the kapata and the tichel around her, the whole thing. And then who's sitting in the window seat? A Rastafarian. But like a real Rastafarian, you know, with the dreadlocks and, you know, he was, but prior to reaching maximum elevation, he was there already. You know what I'm saying? So, the Arabic I speak, this I don't, the verstehst. So, anyway, they don't know what to do with us. We're circling and circling. They keep giving us drinks and drinks and drinks. And finally, the Arab has to go pish. So he goes to the bathroom. At that moment, a Chabad rabbi comes running down the aisle in a panic. He stops by my seat. Of course, he recognizes me. I knew Chabad, but all Chabad know me. I'm like the Howie Mandel of Chabad. You know Howie Mandel? You know, he had a television show called Deal or No Deal. It was very famous. So I'm like the Howie, that's what they call it. Anyway, in fact, they wanted to have a television show, a Jewish one, a Jewish Deal or No Deal. They were going to have me do. They weren't going to call it Deal or No Deal because it's Jewish. And they were going to call it, are you going to buy it or you're wasting my time? It's a different type of, something different. So anyway, the Chabad rabbi stops at my seat, he looks at me and he tells me he's got a problem. So what's the matter? He said, I'm flying from Chicago to New York the day before Rosh Hashanah to go to the Ohel, to go to the Rebbe, Lubavitch Rebbe's grave, a holy place, to put my tefillin on, say some blessings, and then fly back to Chicago for Rosh Hashanah. But here I've been a whole day flying in circles. I haven't put tefillin on yet. I don't know what to do. You know, we can't stand because of the weather, and I can't talk because if I talk, I can't pray, I can't talk at the same time. He said if I was flying El Al to Israel, everybody puts tefillin on. It's not a problem. You can stand. You know, even the flight attendants walk down the aisle. You know, pillows, tefillin, blankets, pillows. You know, it's a whole different type of nice. You know? But here I'm flying from. So I said to him, "Calm down. You came to the right place. Don't worry. Calm down." So I say to him, "Go get your tefillin. No problem. Bring it over. You'll do. Anybody asks you a question, I'll take care of it." He goes, "Yeah, go." Comes back with his tefillin on. He's about to put it on, but Arab Muslim comes back to his seat, sees a choshed with boxes, you know, like, what is this? And the flight attendant shows up. She goes, "Are you okay? What is the matter? What's the matter? What is that? Are you okay?" So they're all there, and I decided, and even the Rastafarian looked up for a minute. So I decided I use levity, I use humor to kind of calm things down. So I decided to say, you know, he's taking his spiritual blood pressure. They don't laugh. Okay. Except for the Rastafarian, but he was staring at clouds, and I don't think that counts. So I said, listen, he's got these magic Jewish boxes. He's going to say a prayer, and then the weather's going to clear up, and we can land the plane. And the flight attendant said, "Go ahead." So he puts the tefillin on. He's Baruch Hashem. Tefillin. I say, "Omen." The pilot gets on. Apparently the weather was cleared up. Please prepare for land. The flight attendant says, "Well, that worked." The Arab was like, "I've never seen such a thing in my..." And the entire landing, this Rastafarian stood looking at me like this. Whoa. So I fly and I fly. I meet Hasidim every place. I meet them all over. Baruch Hashem. The reason I met that guy on the plane, why? Because in 1798, we were celebrating today, 1798, the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitch Rebbe, came out of prison. If he was stuck in prison and he didn't do what he had to do, and all the great mitzvahs and all the great miracles that took place, maybe that chassid and I wouldn't meet on the plane. And maybe you wouldn't be here either. Everything is hashgacha pratis from something else. Everything you do is going to affect someplace else, even hundreds of years later. Each of us has a story. I have a story. Tonight's my turn. May 2010, I sat in my house in Long Island staring at my computer screen. And it's a funny thing about Facebook. If you turn off Facebook for just a minute, you know what you see? You actually see your face. I was looking at my face. And I'm saying, who are you? What do you want to do with your life? I had been a number of things. I was a filmmaker. I was a conservative rabbi for 20 years. I'm now a recovering conservative rabbi. I go to the meetings. They have meetings. It's not a 12-step program. It's a 612 or 13-step program, rather. So anyway, I can tell you my problems are from your problems. I'm sitting there, what do I want to do with my life now? And all of us go through this. I go to college campus, and there are hundreds of college campuses. The kids are running around saying, what do I want to major in? What do I want to do? What do I want to major in? I don't have the heart to tell them that 30 years from now, they're still going to be walking around. What do I want to do? What do I want to have? No idea. But let them think they're picking something. So I'm sitting there wondering, what do I want to do with my life? I want to do something. Something to make a mark, something important. And Israel was on my mind. Israel was on my mind. I had just returned from Israel. If you're ever on a plane from Israel and you hear the baby crying, it's not the baby, it's me. I cry when I leave her. Yeah. So I thought to myself, I'm a filmmaker, Rabbi, I'm going to go around with my camera and ask Jews one question. Just one question. I'm going to ask any comments on Israel. Any comments on Israel. And the answer, one person's going to say, oh, the falafel's delicious. Oh, the archaeology is fascinating. Any comments in Israel? Oh, Masada was spectacular. Any comments in Israel? Oh, the Kotel, the Western Wall is something. And I'm going to take all the answers and I'm going to put them on YouTube and I'm going to push that button. The button on your keyboard that says, make it go viral. Make it go viral. And it'll go viral. And everybody will go ahead. And they'll see it. And everybody will love Israel and see how beautiful the falafel is and the Kotel is. And that was my plan. That's what I was going to do with the rest of my life. My wife comes into the office, and she says to me, this is what you're going to do with the rest of your life? I said, yeah, pretty much so. She said, is there any dental? Money, anything? So as we were having that very mature conversation, my son was up in his bedroom. And he had just returned from the APAC convention, and he was all 14, 15, 16, whatever, young teenager. He's calling the White House. He gets the tape machine. And he leaves a message. Hi, this is Adam Nesenoff. I'd like to come there on Hanukkah. It's a Hanukkah story. I'd like to come there next Hanukkah, which is in 10 months, to be there with Mr. Obama and all these other people, and the Rabbi would like the Hanukkah menorah at the White House. Okay, and I'd like to videotape it and stream it live. Can you please call me back? My name is Adam Nesenoff. So they call him back. They say, Adam, we're a little confused. Do you mean you want to come next Hanukkah to the White House in 10 months? Or do you really mean you want to come next week for Jewish Heritage Day? And he said, next week for Jewish Heritage Day. And it is a proud moment in a parent's life when your children learn how to lie correctly. So your whole life, don't lie. Bingo, 3 press passes to the White House. One for my son. He had a website about kids schmoozing together. One for me. I had a website, RabbiLive.com, which is now famous. At the time, we were using it for prayer services for American Jewish soldiers in Afghanistan, Iraq, and on aircraft carriers. And some very lazy Jews in Boynton Beach, Florida were looking at it also. And also, the 3rd press pass went to a friend of my son's, this teenage kid, 6 foot tall, redhead. He should be allowed in public places at any given time, but he went with us. So the 3 of us went down to Washington. Still wasn't sure I'm going to get in. Still wasn't sure I should be going. But I thought, all the Jews are going to be there. I'll ask that one question. Any comments on Israel to all the Jews? And I'll start my whole new career to help save Israel. And they'll tell me about the falafel and everything. So we get down there, and they let us in. I couldn't believe they let us in. We get into the White House. The first place he goes to the press room, where the press all gather around. And, they're all setting up their cameras. I'm, of course, standing in front of the Obama's podium doing, Nixon imitations and stuff, getting photographs and, being like a little tourist, And then I do the most important thing. I call everybody I know to act like a macher. Hi, I'm at the White House today. Oh, yeah, I'm very busy. I'll be here all day. Hi, I can't make it to the meeting. There's no meeting? Well, I'm at the White House today. Did I mention that? And as I'm machering it up and calling everybody and telling them about the White House, I look out the window, just like this, and I see who walks by who's visiting the White House that day. Former President Bill Clinton. And I'm like, whoa, it's Bill Clinton. I gotta go. It's Bill Clinton. I'm very busy. I'll see you later. I go running out the door. Bill Clinton walks right in front of me, and I say, Bill Clinton! I was really nonchalant about it. And he walks by, and he's very nice. He's like, hey, how you doing? So I was all excited. I said, we're in the White House 10 minutes. I see Bill Clinton. I turn to the next guy, and I say, that's Bill Clinton! And that guy said to me, I know. I'm Joe Biden. I know. So apparently I met Joe Biden. Well, I saw him later in the afternoon. He does spend most of the day walking around. I'm Joe Biden. I'm Joe Biden. So the Jews weren't coming till the afternoon. Okay, so we had the morning to kill. I did notice, though, by the way, even though the Jews were not coming till the afternoon, on the front lawn of the White House, there was a loose Jew. A loose Jew. It turned out to be a Chabad rabbi. A perfectly good Chabad rabbi got out loose and was running on the loose on the front lawn of the White House. I don't know why, I don't know what happened, I don't know what he was doing there. So I went up to him to see who he was. Turns out, it's Rabbi Levi Shem Tov, very famous rabbi from Washington. He was there. I went to ask him what he's doing there 2 hours early. He said he's there because he's going to make the White House kitchen kosher for Jewish Heritage Day. So, sure enough, I go up to him. I never interviewed anybody before. So I said, let me interview him. I'm a reporter now for 5 minutes. I said, are you going to kosher the spoons? And he said, yes, the spoons. Okay, what about the fork? You do the spoons, you got to do the fork. So I thought I'd give him a gotcha moment. I said, is it milchik suflesh, it's dairy or meat? He said, that's national security. I can't answer that question. So anyway, we were walking along. I was ready to go home, but I still wanted to wait till the afternoon to ask all the Jews any comments on Israel and hear about the falafel and save Israel. So we're walking along the front lawn of the White House, and who do I see walking towards us? Helen Thomas. Helen Thomas is walking towards me with some other lady. I say to my son, this is the most famous journalist in the entire world. She's been in the White House for 60 years, 10 presidents. Sat in the front row, unprecedented with her name on it. She's been there since Eisenhower and Kennedy. I think she dated Lincoln's younger brother, I'm not sure, but she's been there many, many years. So she always had the first question, and at the end she always said, thank you, Mr. President. She was in movies, she was there. Most famous journalist, she's been a journalist for 60 years, I've been a journalist for 60 seconds. I thought it was time we met. So I said to the boys, let's go meet the most famous journalist in the world. We went running over to Yarmulkes and Tzitzis on Jewish Heritage Day. Go over there. I pulled out my little flip camera. Remember the flip cameras? Not that when I speak to college audiences, I have to explain because it's a 1.5 year old technology. So I pull out the flip camera. I put it in front, and I asked her, any advice for new journalists? And she said something like, "Oh, always ask questions." And I thought, always ask questions. Come to think of it, I did have that one question that I was saving for this afternoon for all the Yidlach and all the people, and I was going to change and help Israel and make it go viral. And but now that she mentions it, I'll ask her. And I said to her, any comments on Israel? And she said, tell them to get the hell out of Palestine. And I said, ooh. A week later, I was on Fox News. Rabbi Nesenoff, when you said, ooh, what were you thinking? And I remember I said to them, I was thinking, ew. The Washington Post and New York Times had a bidding war on who would get my op-ed piece, and the Washington Post won, and I wrote about a post-ooh world. The fact that every single Jew has inside of him and her a shofar, a ram's horn. And when someone wants to rip Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, out of us, our shofar goes off. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I said, ooh. I didn't know what to do. At the White House. Just tell them to get the hell out of Palestine. If I was back in New York, I know we have some New Yorkers here. We're tough. It's different. If I was back in New York behind a bar somewhere, and a bunch of skinheads came at me and said, tell them to get the hell. I'd get a bat out or I'd fight them. I learned to fight in yeshiva. I know how to fight. So I beat them up. But here I'm at the White House. She's 89 years old. I'm the skinhead. The whole thing was very confusing. I didn't know what to do. So I thought, you know what? I'm a journalist now. I'll ask her a question. She said, tell them to get the hell out of Palestine. I said, where should they go? And she said, home! Now, at this point, by the way, the camera was a few feet away, but I did move it closer. And everybody said that ultimately it was a very close picture to her. And everybody said, that's my signature style of filmmaking, that I had it close. It was because the lawnmower started going on the front lawn of the White House, so I pushed it closer so we can get the microphone. Whatever. I often wonder, why did the lawnmower start going on the front lawn of the White House in the middle of my interview? I don't know how that happens, who makes that decision. But I picture Michelle says to Barack, the Jews are coming this afternoon, the place is a mess. Look at the weeds, the barbecue, get the lawnmower. Like every good husband, and he's out there pushing. So, I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, so she said home. She said home. And I said, by the way, the reason I'm here tonight Because I asked her the next question. If I didn't ask the next question, finished. She'd be where she is, I'd be back wherever I was, you would move on, somebody else, whatever. Because Jews, we have to ask the next question. No one goes to the Passover Seder and says, we're going to hear the one question. Right? We ask 4, and we'd ask 10, but there's food involved, so we make it 4. Okay, we ask. I asked the next question, where's home? And she said, Poland and Germany. Poland and Germany. Time out. I want to go home to Poland. Back to Poland. Sherbshin, Drobnin, the 2 Shtetlach, the 2 villages that my great-grandparents came from. I want to go there. But I want to go on one of those trips in the summer with the tour guide. I want to go in a time machine and set it for pre-Holocaust on a Friday. And I want to be there on a Friday to smell the shtetl of all the people making challahs. Not just the rabbi and his wife, but every single Jew made a challah. And I want to know what that smells like when every single Jew in town makes a challah. And I want to see on Friday night, between the leaves, like in the Yentl movie or Fiddler, the leaves, you see all the houses with the candles burning. I want to see that every single Jew, like Shabbos camps, not just the rabbi and a few Jews, but every single Jew. And I want to go inside the house. When Steven Spielberg used that song for the movie, you know, are you from Pripyat? Are you from Pripyat? I want to go in there and I want to see the Pripyat, the hearth, and I want to see that rabbi teaching the Kinderlach, the children. But I cannot, Mrs. Helen Thomas, because there are no more challahs and shebs and drobnin, and there are no more candles there, and there's no more Pripyat, and there are no more rabbis, and there are no more Kinderlach. There are no more children. They're gone. They've been exterminated, gassed, killed, burned, shot. And I stand there, an American citizen on Jewish Heritage Day with my son, an American citizen, feet from the front door of the White House, and the woman that's been reporting to the world for 60 years the supposed truth says, tell them to get the hell out of Palestine and go back to Poland and Germany. I said to her, are you familiar with the history of the Middle East? She said, yes, I'm from Arab background. So I started speaking to her in Arabic. Apparently, Mrs. Helen Thomas of Arab background doesn't speak a word of Arabic, and Rabbi Nesenoff speaks 2 dialects, Egyptian and Palestinian. The lady that was with her didn't think this was going well. We gotta go. I did go that afternoon. I asked people about the falafel and everything else. I went home to New York, and I went to the senior editor of Jewish Week newspaper, and I told him exactly what I just told you, and he said to me 2 words: no news. So I was met with anti-Semitism in the front lawn of the White House and Jewish apathy from Jewish publishers and Jewish liberal Long Island. I didn't know what to do, but I figured, you know what? I should go ahead and still put it online. Put it on YouTube, put it somewhere, put it on a website. But as you all know, even if you're a multi-billionaire with 60,000 employees and 10 Lear jets, if you want to put something online, you need a 15-year-old to do it. And if you can afford it, get yourself a 12-year-old, but who can afford a 12-year-old? But my son was available, but he was still graduating high school at the time so early, so I didn't want to take him away from his studies. So I waited an entire week. Something happened that week that was so global and monumental that it's still in today's paper, and I don't mean today metaphorically, it's in today's paper. The flotilla from Turkey happened that specific week. A boat comes from Turkey with Arab terrorists. They say they're going to kill Israeli soldiers when they come on board. The Israeli soldiers come on board. The terrorists take out long metal rods and beat the soldiers as they come down the rope. The unconscious 18-year-old Israeli boys get thrown into the Mediterranean Sea. And finally, the Israeli soldiers who didn't even come on board with machine guns took out whatever 6 shooters they had and killed some of the terrorists. The entire world condemned Israel, of course. Israel is Helen Thomas, who still occupied her seat in the White House, stood up in front of the President of the United States and the entire press corps. And she said, it was a deliberate massacre on the high seas by the Israelis against peace activists. And that would be the very last time she would sit, stand, or talk in Washington's White House. That night, my son had some time. So we put up the video Friday morning. 2, 3 in the morning, finally goes up. My son goes off we sent it off to some bloggers, we sent it to some news people, we don't know who to send it to. My son goes off for a Shabbaton, a Sabbath weekend for teenagers. I turn off the computer for Shabbos. Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos, as they say in Portuguese in Brazil. Motzei Shabbos. Okay, don't laugh. Motzei Shabbos, I turn on the computer to see how many people actually saw it. At that point, we had over 700,000 views. Wow. And that's just the people that didn't observe Shabbos. You know, by Sunday, Monday, the thing went crazy. Monday, I'm sitting in my kid's bedroom, you know, with the soccer wallpaper. I'm sitting at his little table there, looking at the computer screen. He's off at school, and I see the emails come in like this. We had thousands a second. First, we had 25 to 30,000 hate mails and death threats. It was taken very seriously. We had to have a Homeland Security box in the house with antenna remote controls. I'm not laughing. By the way, I know it sounds funny, but it's true. Okay? Everything I say sounds funny, but that's true. Okay? That's what we had. We walked around with it. We also had, this part's kind of funny, we actually had to have a safe room in the house to open mail, which is ridiculous because one person has to go in and open the mail. You know, so like, I don't know what that does, but I'm like, honey, I'll take the garbage out. Can you get the mail today? I mean, it is kind of funny. I didn't get that whole process of how that's going to help us, but everybody wanted to take out the garbage that week. So we had to look under our car, we had to look over there, you know, we had to it was a terrible time. But also, worse than the anti-Semites with the death threats, worse was the press. Thousands and thousands, every single press in the entire world wanted to know who's the guy behind the camera. This was a big story. Why? Well, certainly the flotilla. Certainly Israel is always a big story. But this is a story about a journalist, the most famous journalist, and journalists write about everything, especially journalists, especially the most famous journalist. Will, the most famous journalist of 60 years in the White House front row, what will happen to her? Will she get thrown out? What will happen? What did she say? What will happen? So I get thousands and thousands and thousands of interview requests from everything all over the world, Germany, Brazil, Israel, the whole United States, television, radio. And I'm sitting there looking at the computer screen, thinking maybe I didn't do the right thing. Maybe this is not going to be good. Maybe the end story is not going to... I didn't know the end story was I'll be in Daytona eating fish. You know, at the time, you don't know. If someone told me, don't worry, you'll have fish in Daytona, okay. But at the time, you get worried. So I'm sitting at the time wondering, I'm yelling at God, you know, what do I do with the entire world press corps? What do I do with the entire world? And the phone rings. It's Ari Fleischer, former President Bush's White House press secretary. This'll do. He gets on the phone. Yashikov, Rabbi Nesenoff, how can I help you? Told him what's going on. He said, well, in the White House, we used to have 50 people work on a thing like this to sort them and put everything in order. I said, it's just me, my son, and his friend. We don't let out in public places. He said, listen, this is what you have to do. The most important thing. Most important. You have to have a message. You have to have a message. If you don't have a message, they'll make up a message. And it's an opportunity for a rabbi, a Jew, any Jew, who's going to get on television, radio, all over the world. You have to have a message. I said to him, Ari, what's my message? He said, David, you have to think of what's your message. I thanked him very much. I've spoken to him many times since then. He's a wonderful man. My son comes home from school. I say to my son, Ari Fleischer called. And my son says, I know, I told him to call you. My wife and I are a little scared of him. So I said, well, he did. So I figured my son's smart. So I said to myself, well, what's our message? He said, we need a message. So he said, we're not smart enough to think of a message. He said, we have to get some advice. I said, who should we get advice from? He said, listen, I've been reading what's going on in the paper. I see what's online. I see it on the phone. I see our emails. Video is being shown on every single television station in the world. He said, you can call Abba. He said, Dad, you can call anybody in the world today. They'll take your call. Even if they don't know you by name. Who do you want to call? I said, well, I don't know. He said, you can call anybody in the world today. They will take your call. Who do you want to call? I thought, who do I want to call for advice? This is a story about anti-Semitism, about Israel, about Germany, Poland, the Holocaust. I said one name. Elie Wiesel. Bring me Elie Wiesel. My son says, you want Elie Wiesel? I said, yeah. No. He says, whoever you want. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay. He goes running out of the room. It was seconds, literally seconds later, my son walks back in the room. Here's Elie Wiesel. I get on the phone. Yashikov, Rabbi Nesenoff. I know he sounds like Ari Fleischer, but I can only do one imitation. So I say, Professor Wiesel, I'm getting a lot of hate mail. And he says, I give a lot of that too. Figure Eli was out for sure. So I asked him, what's my message? Here's a man, he knows how to give a message. Nobel laureate, he's written dozens of books. He wrote the book Night. He speaks from the Washington Holocaust Memorial to Yad Vashem in Yerushalayim in Jerusalem. He speaks at Auschwitz, speaks to big... He knows how to give a message. I asked him, what's my message to the world? And he said something very strange to me. He said, I read about you in the newspaper this morning. So? I read that you pray with Chabad. I said, I pray with Chabad. Even when I was a conservative rabbi, I prayed with Chabad. You need a minion, So I pray with Chabad, sure. Everybody prays with Chabad. Everybody loves Chabad. And what am I talking about Chabad for? He says to me, if you're looking for a message, why don't you find out what the Lubavitch Rebbe would have wanted you to say? I don't have to review for this group. Lubavitch Rebbe, dynasty of 7 master rabbis from the Alter Rebbe. We were celebrating his works today. People came to the Rebbe from the homeless to the heads of state, to army generals, asking for advice. Still to this day, his advice is sought, and still to this day, even though his body is buried in Queens, his neshama, his soul, is alive in 70 countries, 5,000 Chabad houses. I thanked him very much. The next day I showed up at my Chabad house in Long Island, Rabbi Chaim Grossbaum. Of course, my whole life had changed, you have to understand, after this whole thing. I now had an entourage. I have the guy carrying my tallis bag, my tefillin bag, I'm walking in for Shabbos. The whole thing is like mamacha, and I loved it. I was on the phone during Shabbos. It's terrible. You shouldn't do that. But I'm like, strap me up. I'll say my name later. So after the davening was over, and whatever davening I was able to get in, I go up to Rabbi Chaim Grossbaum of Chabad. I say to the shaliach there in Stony Brook, I say to him, Ari Fleischer said I need a message, and Eli Wiesel said I should find out if the Lubavitch Rebbe wants me to stay on television. And this is, I love Chabad for so many reasons, but this is one of the reasons I love Chabad. In my old shul, they form a committee to vote on a vote to see if they can vote. Okay, if I ask them a question like that, you know what I'm saying? Okay, just, So, a Chabad rabbi, he sets up the tables, he puts out the microphones, he schleps in this, his wife is cooking, they're doing, the kids are on the phone, they're schlepping the dough. And when it comes time to saving the world, okay, let's do that too. He said, he was modest. He said, I can't answer you that question, but let's go call somebody who really knows what the Rebbe was saying when it came to anti-Semitism in Israel and all these different issues. And he picks up the phone and he calls up Rabbi Avram Shem Tov. Very great Hasidic rabbi who, actually, if you're following along, he's the father of the rabbi who was kosher in the kitchen at the White House. So, gets him on the phone. He knows exactly what happened. He knows who I am. He knows the whole story. And he gives me a message that a few years later now, after I've studied more about the Rebbe's teachings, as they say in Australia where I've been, in England and Ireland, he was spot on. He was spot on. He got it. He knew it. The exact words of the Rebbe. And because all of you, for some reason, have come here tonight, in this moment of your life, and this is the moment of your life, by the way. Yesterday is a memory, tomorrow's on the calendar. We're in the moment. That's why a Jew, by the way, says a bracha, says a blessing. We eat an apple, a Jew says a blessing before, he says a blessing afterwards. We're putting parentheses around the moment. We want to capture the moment instead of running through it like most people. And I want to thank the audience also, all of you here also, for coming tonight. I don't take it for granted. I go all over the world and I thank audiences. Thank you very much. I know there's Daytona, there's so many things to do in Daytona. It's a cool town, it's great, the beach, I know the whole bit. You can ride on the beach, whatever. So I say all over I tell everybody that, not just, except for Tucson, Arizona. It was a Tuesday night, I said, where else were you going to go? It's Tucson. So they knew, they said, of course, we know. So, but because you're here, I'm going to have the merit of giving you this message of the Rebbe. And it's very brief, and this is it. If you have a friend, and your friend goes away for a year, is he still your friend? Of course he is, maybe. If you don't see your friend for 4 years, is he still your friend? Sure, he's still my friend. I haven't seen my friend in 4 years. But if you don't see your friend as we get older, for 50 years, 50 years, is he still your friend? Well, maybe he's not my friend. He's an old friend. Maybe he's not my friend at all. But if you have a child, your child goes away for a year, is he still your child? Of course he is. If you don't see your child for 4 years, is he still your child? Of course he is. And I'll say it this way. Chas v'shalom, I'll say it in the holy language. Chalila v'chas, God forbid. A person doesn't see their child for whatever reason. I don't want to think of the reason. For 50 years, a person doesn't see their child. Is that still your child? I see the mothers, of course. Yes, of course, it's still my child. And then he said to me, we are not the friends of Israel. We are B'nai Yisrael. We are the children of Israel. And sometimes the children are away for 50 years in North America, and sometimes they're away for 2,000 years in the Golos, in the diaspora, and sometimes they're away for 4 years in Auschwitz. And it doesn't matter where they live and what generation they grew up in, what language they speak. It doesn't matter if they've been to Israel a million times or they don't like Israel. It doesn't matter. Children are eternal. It's the very organic nature of their relationship. The children of Israel and the land of Israel exist. Is a God-given existence. What this woman said, he said, why are they there? Why are these Jews there? How did they get there? How did they find that place? And what people like her are still saying today very strongly throughout the world. Why? It's because children are forever. It's the very nature of their relationship. The children of Israel have that relationship with the God-given land of Israel. 2 days later, I'm on CNN. Howard Kurtz, reliable sources, all potched up, ready to go on live television. My son and his friends should go out in public places. Is behind me, don't ask. They asked me the first question, and I have no idea what the first question was. But I know the answer. The children of Israel and the land of Israel, God-given forever. They asked me the second question, and I said, did I mention that the children of Israel are God-given? Drove across the United States, telling people and everybody and everything. We had made a movie actually called 3,000 Miles. It premiered at the Simon Wiesenthal Center Museum of Tolerance. Asking people anti-Semitism, telling people our message about children of Israel. And get back to New York. There's a letter waiting for me when I get back to New York. At this point in college audiences, I have to stop and explain what a letter is. Do you push it? Do you click it? No, you don't click. You open. You rip it. You rip it. You click it. No, you rip it. Don't keep paying the tuition. Don't. So I open the letter. Who's it from? Yale University. Asking me to be the keynote speaker at the Yale University Global Symposium on Anti-Semitism. First thing I did was I called my mother. Ma? Remember when Yale didn't accept me to college? Now they asked me to come and teach there. So I called up Yale, and I told Yale that I'm putting them on a waiting list. What goes around comes around. Well, I got around to them. I went to Yale. There were hundreds of professors from all over the world, waiting to hear my message. I walk in. By the way, even before I got in the room, sometimes things happen in the lobby before you get. So I'm in the lobby waiting to go into Yale. I never tell this to people here. I get in the lobby, and a guy comes running up to me and says, "Are you Rabbi Nesenoff?" I said, "Yes, I am." So I thought that was you. I said, "Well, it's me." He says, "I admire what you did." I said, "Well, thank you very much." He said, "But my wife, not so much." I said, "Oh, does your wife like Helen Thomas?" He said, "Oh, nothing to do with Helen Thomas. 5 years ago, you officiated at our wedding." If you're not married, you won't get the joke till 5 minutes after you're married. So, anyway, I'm inside. Let's make it short. I'm inside the room. Hundreds of professors. Charles Asher Small, the famous professor who's the chairman of, whatever, gets up and he's going to introduce me. He says, "Before I introduce our guest, I want to tell you exactly why he's our keynote speaker." And I'll tell you, I was kind of interested to find out as well. And he says, "I never watched television. I was watching CNN. I saw this rabbi. I heard him say one thing: the children of Israel and the God-given land of Israel don't want to exist because of the children." He said, something came over me, and I said, "That's the message we have to give. That's the message." I got up there, and that was the first time I told everyone, not only the message, but where that message came from. The Lubavitch Rebbe. That's where the message came from. He cuts through it all. Hasidus people think is fluff and on top. It's not. It's cutting through it right down the middle. It's telling you the emes, telling you the truth. It's not about what I for years thought it was about. Truman, 1948, Herzl, Six-Day War, 48 War, all the things, the United Nations. The Rebbe says one thing. Tell the God story. Tell the God story. There are Jews, there are children of Israel. God gave them that land. Tell the God story. We're afraid to tell the God story. We don't talk about God, we talk about politics. Tell the God story. Don't worry. You know what? We're afraid to tell the God story. You know what they're doing? You heard of UNESCO? United Nations Educational SCO? UNESCO? I taught at Yale. I know what it's saying. Something like that. They declared Kever Rachel, the tomb of Rachel. We're reading about her in the Torah. The tomb of Rachel. She died along the way. And we've been going for 4,000 years to pray for motherhood and childhood and health on her graveside. The holy place for Jews for 4,000 years. UNESCO officially declared it a mosque. You heard of the Kotel, the Western Wall, the Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount? They built a mosque. Now it's a big deal going on. The Jew can't pray, can't even walk up there, say a word. A Jew went up there last summer. He made a bracha over water because it was hot. They arrested him for saying Shakol Yevivaro. Amen. They arrested him. 4 Jews went up there and bowed. They arrested him. The people. My son, who's a bit of a character, he went up there with a bunch of yeshiva boys and the head of a yeshiva. And they prayed the entire afternoon mincha service on the Temple Mount. Allowed and did not get arrested. Because you're allowed to give a tour, but you cannot pray. So the head of the yeshiva takes the boys up there and he goes like this. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shenei rabbah. V'yalmad yivrach Yerushalayim yamlich marach yisayim b'chayich. And all the boys look at each other like this, Yehi shnei rabbah. That's what a Jew has to do. My friends, and we're going to eat in a moment, and I'm going to talk a little afterwards. This is not about land, this whole story. My great-grandmother, who I'm named after, my name is David, her name is Devosya. She's buried at Babi Yar with 100,000 souls. They did not kill her because they wanted her house in Kiev. They killed her because they wanted her dead in Kiev. This is not about land. We gave up everything and lived in one corner on Dizengoff Street in Tel Aviv, and all the Jews went into one apartment. They would want that apartment exterminated. This is not about land. It's about anti-Jewish behavior, thank you, anti-Semitism. And I want to tell you, because it's important for you to know, how do we fight anti-Jewish behavior? I'm an expert, I taught at Yale. How do we fight anti-Jewish behavior? Everybody wants to know. Well, you can certainly join the Israeli Defense Forces. It's a good start. But how do we do it? We're in Daytona. I'm in Boca. I go to people in Nevada. I go to people in California, Calgary. I go to people in Brazil. I go to people. How do we all fight anti-Jewish behavior? The way you fight anti-Jewish behavior is by doing Jewish behavior. That's how you mean putting tefillin on? Yes. You mean going ahead and light Shabbos? Yes. You mean making a challah, having a challah? Yes. You mean coming to a class at the shul and learning from a rabbi and the rebbe? Yes! Sitting here tonight and doing Jewish behavior, it's fighting it? Yes! That is fighting anti-Jewish behavior. And that's how we, and by the way, I didn't say feeling Jewish. I said doing Jewish. If my grandfather played tennis and my mother said, David, I'd like you to play tennis. Here, feel the tennis, David. No racket, just feel. Feel the tennis, David. No balls, just feel the tennis. How good, I'm in Boca. In the morning meeting, a guy says to me, he's a tennis pro and he wants to teach me tennis. Okay. I show up the first day with my shorts on and a racket, ready to go. And he sees I got the racket. He says, oh, you brought your racket. I said, well, yeah, it's tennis. Everybody always brings their racket. I said, well, it's tennis. He says, I like to spend the first 3 weeks just feeling our wrist. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, I want to hit the ball over the net and lose a couple of pounds, He says, oh, the net, everybody's so worried about the net. David, come here. The net is not so scary. I spent 20 minutes feeling the net. I don't want to feel tennis. And I don't want to feel Jewish. I want to do Jewish. Because doing Jewish is the only reason that we're sitting here today. Because someone took the time out in the generation before us to do Jewish. And we're taking the time out to do Jewish as well. So Helen Thomas was thrown out of the White House. She was thrown out of her publisher's office, out of her speaker's bureau office. She was thrown out of the press. Her name was taken off all the awards. She was given 3 awards by 3 terrorist organizations, and she accepted it. And I went on to become a publisher and a few other things we'll talk about. But I'll just tell you this. She said, by the way, I'll tell you this also. My son, we mentioned my son. I'll just tell you. My son taught me about anti-Jewish, how to do it. First of all, what's the name of that machine that in Israel that hit the rockets go up in it from Sderot? The Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is, how do you say it in Hebrew? Kippot Barzel. Tell me how that's scary. You're from Israel. Kippot Barzel. By the way, I was in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago and I said, how do you say Iron Dome in Hebrew? And some guy in the back said, Kippot Barzel. I said, are you from Israel? He said, what's the matter with you? I'm from Los Angeles. Israelis are very tough. So Kippot Barzel, not Iron Dome. You know what a Kippot Barzel is? Kippah, Barzel is steel, and iron is steel yarmulke. Steel yarmulke. When they fired anti-Jewish rockets in Israel, what did Israel do and show the world? They put on their steel yarmulke. That's how you fight anti-Jewish behavior. And I didn't know that. My son went to public school in New York, and he was fraught with anti-Semitism and Holocaust and swastikas and KKK. And I'd be down there yelling at the principal, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic. I had no idea how to fight it. My son figured it out. One day he had enough. He went back to his bedroom at home, and he put on his kippot barzel. He put on his steel yarmulke, and he put on his steel tzitzis. And he dressed like a mensch, like a Jew should dress when he's wearing yarmulke and tzitzis. And he walked into school for the rest of his high school career. He hit people in the hallway with his tzitzis, as he walked by. And no one bothered him. They looked at him and said, oh, look at that. Look at that, he's doing Jewish. You can't tell him he's Jewish anymore. He knows that he's doing Jewish. So, Helen Thomas went on her way, and I decided to follow her lead because people started attacking me. Once you take somebody down, they're going to take you down. Anyway, I decided I'm going to go home. I'm going to Israel. Day before Rosh Hashanah that year, I'm sitting at JFK Airport in a seat at the gate, at El Al Gate, thinking about everything I just told you, the good, the bad, the problems, all the things. And I noticed 100 Hasidim standing at the gate across the way. They weren't the Lubavitches. They were Belzer. It was another brand. Okay. So they're over there. So I'm sitting there, and they look over at me, and they're looking at me. Then they start to nonchalantly, like I walk over, like I wouldn't notice 100 Hasidim walking over to me. So I'm sitting there wondering, what do these guys want from me? And they're on the phone, and they're pointing at me, and they're walking around me slowly, looking at me. It was like a slow-motion horror. And I'm going, what? But finally, one guy has enough chutzpah. He leans over, and he points to me, and he says, are you the guy? I said, what? He said, are you the guy, Washington, the guy Washington. You the guy? I said, yeah, I'm the guy, Washington, I'm the guy, Washington. He gets all excited. He's the guy. It was, I was going home to Israel, baby. And finally, and I say finally, you release something and then finally, you know what they say, Gentiles leave without saying goodbye, Jews say goodbye and never leave. So finally, I will tell you, I started with something my son, I'll finish by telling you, my son, by the way, has gone on, he's studying smicha right now at Chabad in Crown Heights, okay? And when they stabbed the boy last night, it was very close to home for all us Jews, and especially if you had a student, your own child, in that very building. So he's studying there. He went to Guatemala for Sukkot. He went to Cuba for Passover, to go 14 hours on a bus to deliver for the Lubavitch Rebbe one matzah to a Jew and to run a Seder there. He went to the prisons on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Actually, up here, there's a state prison somewhere up here he went to. And I sit on the Rosh Hashanah table. My mother says, "Where's Adam?" He's in a federal penitentiary. He'll be there for 3 days. So he's studying it 2 years ago in Morristown, New Jersey. And I promise you this is it. He calls me up, I'm in Boca, he calls me up and he says, I have 4 impacted wisdom teeth. I'm like, okay. So he says, I'm going to have a doctor, a dentist up here, take care of it in the woods in Morristown, So I looked up the name of the doctor, dentist, and he's like a part-time dentist. Okay. And a part-time veterinarian. I didn't really want my son going there, and I really didn't want my dog going there either, to tell you the truth. So I say to him, listen, why don't you come down to Boca? We'll we'll take care of it here, all right? I'll let it to the head of the yeshiva, and then we'll send you back when you're convalescent, you're okay, So he says to me, he's a real Chabad chassid, he says, on one condition. What's that? You find me a Jewish dentist in Boca Raton. You get in a car accident in Boca, you hit the Jewish dentist. But there are no Jewish dentists in Boca, and there are teeth in all of southern Florida. We have. I said, come, don't worry, come. He comes down, goes into the dentist's office. He says to the dentist in the morning, he says, did you put tefillin on today? The dentist says, no. Well, as any Jewish boy normally says, not today. So he says, well, would you like to put tefillin on those hands that are about to operate on my teeth? So he says, okay. So he takes off his jacket, he rolls up the sleeve, he puts the tefillin on, we say the blessings over the tefillin, he says Shema Yisrael, he says a silent prayer, we take a photograph, we put it on Facebook, all the traditional things. He takes the 4 teeth out. No pain, Novocaine or tefillin, I don't know, worked. My son comes back to our home in Boca. That very night, at 11:30 p.m. at night, the phone rings in our house. Now, I don't think, although I think you know what I'm talking about. 11:30 at night, a house in Boca, the phone rings. Okay? We eat dinner there at 3:30. 4:30, we watch Letterman and the 11 o'clock news. 11:30, the neighbors are like, what's that noise? What's the ringing? I pick up the phone. It's the dentist. I say, what can I do for you? He says, can I speak to your son? Give it to my son. My son gets on the phone. Hangs up. I say, what did he want? My son says, he said that if I can come early tomorrow morning, he'd like to put tefillin on again. Every Jew wants it, a Jew needs it, and you show me a Jew who complains about it, he wants it more. Because it eats inside every single Jew, there is a flame that is burning, and it comes from the ashes of that pripachik, of that hearth. There are embers that crackle and sizzle and sing to us. Oifen Pripitschik brennt Feuerrot und Stieb ist heiß und der Rebbe lernt kleine Kinderlein dem alle face. On the hearth burned a little flame and it warmed the room and the rabbi taught the little children the Aleph Beis. You have to do Jewish Shabbos candles, learn with your Rabbi Rebbitzin, do mitzvahs, do mitzvahs. You should do all the different mitzvahs of doing Jewish, and do it for your children and your grandchildren, because your children are the children of Israel, and your grandchildren are the grandchildren of Israel. Thank you.